Okay, now let's talk about a different classifier, so support vector machines. Support vector machines are relatively simple classifiers. They are very famous, and I will show you later. They are also some of the best classifiers that we have. So basically, if we have a data set with two sets of points, so we have red and blue, our goal is to find this decision boundary. And keep in mind that in this case, we have a two-dimensional data set. So this boundary is a line. But of course, if we're talking about a higher dimensional space, this is usually called the hyperplane, right? So it can be a bit more complex than a line in higher dimensions. Now, I've drew a line here, but I can also draw this line differently, right? And this is still perfectly fine. If you recall what I said earlier about the error calculation, these two boundaries, these two classifiers, have exactly the same error. They have an error of 0. They don't make any mistakes. So which one should we prefer? Is it boundary 1 or boundary 2? And maybe, yeah, if you have an idea which one is better, you can also tell me. So maybe raise your hand. So who thinks boundary 1 is better than 2?
It's very difficult because we're seeing this in 2 dimensions. I mean, it's difficult to estimate, really, I think, isn't it?
But, well, let's assume that the data is actually two-dimensional. So we're just looking at two variables here. So I give you both classifiers. So which one would you buy? Let's put it this way.
I think boundary 1 is better because it's further away from all of the individual dots.
Exactly. So that's exactly what SVM does. So SVM would calculate the distance between the margins, from each label set and the boundary that you have calculated. And then it will favor the ones that have a higher margin. So in this case, the margin between the black boundary and the red points and the blue points is larger than the margin from the orange line, right? So that means that the black boundary is actually better. Why is it better? Because assume that you now have a bit of noise in your data, right? That means that these points at the boundary are actually not to be trusted much, right? So you want to really stay away from them as much as possible. If you're really close, you can get a data point that is here, and then you don't know how to define it, right? Or you can get it here, and then it's classified as blue. While if I remove the boundaries, you will actually say it's much closer to the red. Okay, there's a bit of math behind this. And indeed, as you said, we're only looking at 2D. So what happens actually if I look in 2D and the data is not separable, that they are still overlapping? How can we solve this? And there are tricks to transfer the data, use kernels and so on. But I'm not going to go there. It just shows you, okay, we just rely on these margins to optimize the boundary between the classes.